What is going on, YouTube? Northeast Ohio Sports Cards here to talk a little football. So before we get into things too much, just wanted to give a quick thanks to you guys. We picked up a lot of subscribers since the last video, and we are very close to 700, if not already over 700 at the time that you guys are seeing this. So I just wanted to thank all you guys for pushing me up to around, if not over 700, depending on when you're watching this and when this goes up. So for me to you guys, thanks a lot. Keep clicking the subscribe button, like button, comment button, all the YouTube nonsense down below. I didn't forget this time. Actually, I lied. I did forget this time, and I'm recording this after and editing it into the front because I always forget the YouTube stuff. We're wanting to dig into some football stuff with the season being just over a week away. And I was kind of doing some research this afternoon, digging into some stuff, different sets, different pricing tiers, grades, all that nonsense. And I don't know that I'm the first to discover this. I doubt that I am. This is a large community. But I just stumbled across something interesting that I wanted to record a video on. So what we're going to talk about is Prism and Optic, specifically silvers. And I noticed a trend with earlier years that is not backed up with this past year that I think there could be some buying opportunities on for 2019 stuff. In general, as we know, coming from the football or from the basketball world, Prism drives the market. What Prism does, everything else follows, and football is basically the same. Prism's king, Optic's second. Then it gets a little murky. It's most likely Select at that point as a hobby product. There's some other ones. There's a lot of different sets, but Prism and Optic are essentially the main two. This year for 2020, there's actually going to be Football Mosaic. And I assume that that's going to be quite popular just based off of what basketball did. I think that's actually coming out pretty soon. But so let's look at some examples here of the past and then talk about this last year's class and maybe potential buying opportunities on some of these guys. So first up, we have here, this is our example to kind of show where my thought process is here. We have Dak Prescott. This is his PSA 10 Prism and his PSA 10 Optic Hollow. So this is a silver Prism and his Optic Hollow. They were just called Prisms back in the day. They weren't called silvers. That is something that came later in life. But we can see here on the chart that these two cards, while there's a gap, they stay relatively close together. You could see here the Hollow is around $700 in a 10 on the trending price, and the Prism is around 1,000. Not too bad. The Prism should be more. That's normal. $700 versus 1,000. That seems fine to me. Nothing crazy there. It's not like a third of the price or a quarter of the price or anything crazy like that. So that's our kind of sample point one. Number two, let's look at Mahomes Hollow versus his 17 Prism. Now in 17, there were no base cards. Prism is Prism. So there's not a quote unquote base to go along with that. So this makes this a little weird. But I think it's still valuable. So we see here his PSA 10 Prism is about a little over 7,000, and his Optic Hollow is a little over 4,000. So a $3,000 difference there. It's a bigger gap for sure. But once again, we're not talking like the Mahomes Optic is like half the price of the Prism or a quarter of the price of the Prism or anything like that. It's above half. It's not way above half, but it's a little bit above half. So our next one, and this one's interesting. I actually think, having kind of looked through all this, that this Optic Hollow of the Mahomes is actually underpriced. I think this should probably be higher. Because if we look at the next one, this is Deshaun Watson. Same two cards because they were the same year. And if we scroll down here, this is much tighter. Now, Watson's not Mahomes. Mahomes is on a little bit different level, so things pull apart a little bit more on the super high end. But still, these two cards almost sell for the same amount. The Watson's going for, or the Prism, I'm sorry, is going for around 800, and the Optic is around 700. That is very close together. You can see it on the graph here as well. These cards are priced very similarly compared to the Mahomes. So if you're a high roller, which is not me, I'm not going to go splurging on some Mahomes hollows. I don't got that kind of money laying around to throw on $4,000 cards. But if you are, I think this is a little too cheap. I think this should be closer to 5K, maybe even 6K, probably 5. This should probably be around 5. I feel like this card's definitely undervalued compared to the rest of the market on Mahomes. But let's get into what I really wanted to talk about, and that is last year's stuff. So we've kind of seen that this stuff trends definitely more than half to 3/4 of the Prism. So let's look at Kyler, and we're switching over to raw cards at this point because there's just way more raw of these available than there are PSA 10s. So I wanted a little bit more larger data size. So once again, this is his hollow raw Optic and his hollow silver Prism. So let's go down here, and what do we, first off, just look at the graph. Now, one, I think what's going on here is the Prism prices usually spike first, and Prism silvers spike first of the Prisms, if that makes sense. The first thing to go up when a price moves on a card is usually the silver Prisms, followed by the Prism base, followed by the Optic silvers, followed by the Optic base, typically. So if you look at the pricing data on this, this card dipped down, then shot up. But even at here, pre-dip at 600, and then we come down here and look at this, the Optic is only going for 175. Now let's look at current prices. As you can see, he's clearly been spiking with the season coming up. His silver price is almost 900 right now, but his Optic silver is only 225. Huh? Interesting. This is way below half. What's going on here? To me, this looks like a huge buying opportunity on Kyler Murray at this price, or anything. Really, if you believe in this Prism spike hike, which seems legitimate considering the season's a week away and he's one of the trendiest players. He was already trending up. Looks like he dipped down again and then something shot him back up again. This just seems way too cheap. And like I said, even if you go pre this spike, let's say that his natural price is 600, even at that, that's still way under half. There's still at least $75 to $100 there to grow based off what we saw off the charts for the other players from previous years. This card should be about 60 to 70% of what the Prism goes for, and it's nowhere near that, especially if you believe in this current price spike. This should shoot way up, like way up. It should be like 600. It's like $400 undervalued if you believe in this. But even if you don't believe in that, this is still too low in my opinion. And we're going to see a trend here. So let's hop over to Daniel Jones. Once again, same thing. We see a lot of big price spikes with him. And we see the Optic trending up to go along with the Prism trending up. This one's closer, but it's still lagging behind. It's still half of the Prism value, which that doesn't typically seem to be the case the further you go back in time. So I think there's a little bit of value on this one, not as much as Kyler. This Kyler thing looks like a massive mispricing on that Optic Hollow. Let's move on to the next player, AJ Brown. Love me some AJ Brown. The market loves AJ Brown. Same thing we see here. This one, once again, a little closer, but it's still under 50%. So 60 for his silver, only 27 for his Optic Hollow. So I think his Optic Hollow is a little undervalued, not a ton, not as much as the Kyler is. The Kyler is the major outlier here. But I think this is a little undervalued, and he's also a super trendy player as well. AJ Brown is extremely popular, and to go back to like basketball, comparisons because that's the world that I come from. He reminds me of a Michael Porter Jr. The hobby loves him. Everybody loves him. Fantasy guys love him. He's the talk of the town. If he puts up numbers to back up what he's doing, his stuff is going to go nuts. And if you're telling me I can get his optic hollow for around $30, that seems super cheap to me, especially compared to his PSA or to his raw prism silver. Let's look at another guy, also extremely trendy, also at the same position, DK Metcalf. This is another one that really stands out. Look at this chart. His prism silver has been a rocket ship for the last week or so, but the optic is not following. Once again, prism silver leads the way, optic follows after. That leaves a buying opportunity for us. So look at this. His silver prism, 175 raw. Optic, 45. This is very much in the Kyler Murray territory of misprice. You know, if you believe in the it should be more than half, you're way off on this. And if it's, you know, even if you believe in it should be like 60% of the prism, there's a ton of room to go up here. This card is severely lagging behind compared to the prism silver, and I think it's due to rise. Once again, the optic usually follows the prism almost like clockwork. I don't expect that to be any different in the football world coming from the basketball world. And once again, I think you can apply this out to whatever player you like. Everyone that I looked at fell into one of these two categories, either drastically mispriced like Metcalf or Murray, or kind of mispriced like AJ Brown and Daniel Jones. The other thing that I noticed, and I didn't pull examples here because some of these aren't in market movers because they're even lower pop, is I really think good buys, regardless of the player, once again, specifically talking the 19 class, the 1920 class, the optic parallels that aren't the hollows. So like your teals, your green velocities, your numbered stuff, things like that. Red and yellows, those sorts of things that are lower print runs and all seem really cheap compared to a lot of the other stuff that's on the market. The football market's been moving for the last month or so, and it's been the prism stuff that's been on fire. I think people have left the optic behind, and I don't want to say they forgot about it, but the wave hasn't pushed it up yet. And I think, and I didn't dig into this, so I could be wrong on this one. I don't have any data on this, so I hate to just speculate without actually having numbers in front of me. I'm guessing, in fact, I'm almost positive just based off stuff I've been buying. Select is the same way. It probably got forgotten about. And one of my favorite things to look for in Select are the field levels, both base and silvers. They tend to be, the silvers usually get a little bit of respect. But I've been buying like AJ Brown silvers for less than what the prism's going for. And that should not be the case, really. The field level stuff is super short print. Super short print. So I would look into whatever players you like from the 19 class and see what their field levels are going for in both raw and silvers. So that's all I got for you guys today. Once again, apply this out to whatever players you like. I'm not necessarily saying run out and buy these guys. I do think, based off of this data, that the Metcalf and Murray specifically are mispriced in the current market. The bigger point I want you guys to take from this is pick your favorite players from 1920 and go look at their optic and select stuff. Odds are their prism stuff has shot up and the optic and select is still lagging behind a little bit. So you could potentially find some value in that stuff. You got plenty of time to still get it, buy it this weekend, get it shipped out to you before next week, and have that stuff ready to rock and roll. I am treating football as extremely short-term investments. I am not looking to hold football players for long-term. If I get into a guy and his price is double, I'm going to immediately probably look to get out of it, depending on who it is. So if I buy AJ Brown for $50 for say I get a good deal on a Prism Silver and get it for $50, and that he has a really good week 1 or week 2, and that thing shoots up to 100, 150, I am beginning to form my exit strategy for that card. This is just me personally. I know plenty of people play the football for the long game. It is not my style. I just feel these guys get hurt way too much to tie up a bunch of money in football players. The other thing that I would say is if you're diving into football, spread your risk. Don't go all in on one guy, because all it takes is one bad tackle and your entire portfolio. And you don't want that. So spread the risk. And like I said, me personally, I'm not looking to hold football guys long term. The only exception to that rule might be a few of the quarterbacks like a Mahomes. I don't have any of his stuff. I probably won't have any of his stuff. I missed the boat on that. It's way too expensive now for me. And I would rather, if I had that type of money to throw at Mahomes, I would rather throw it at basketball players, not NFL players, just because of the injury concerns. So anyways, that's all I got for you guys today. We will catch you guys on the next one. You guys have a nice rest of your week. Peace.